My nan used to live in a small village outside York. It was one of those places that look beautiful in the daytime. Stone cottages, narrow lanes, hanging baskets outside the pub, an old church at the top of the hill, and the kind of silence people from the cities always say they want. But at night, it felt different. The village didn't have proper streetlights everywhere. Some roads were lit by old yellow lamps, others barely at all. Once the pub closed and the last few cars disappeared, the whole place became still in a way that made every small sound feel too loud. I was 17 at the time and staying with my nan for a week while my parents were away. I thought I was old enough to walk around alone. To be fair, nothing ever happened there. At least that's what I thought. One evening I walked to the village shop just before it closed. It was only about 10 minutes from my nan's house, and I'd done it plenty of times before. On the way back, I passed an old house near the bend to the lane. I knew it was empty because my nan had mentioned it a few times. The woman who lived there had died months earlier, and no one had bought it yet. The garden was overgrown, the gate leaned to one side, and the upstairs curtains were faded and half hanging from the rail. As I walked past, I glanced up. There was someone standing in the upstairs window. An old woman? She was wearing something pale, maybe a nightdress. She stood behind the glass, completely still, looking down at the street. I stopped walking. At first I thought maybe I got the wrong house. Maybe someone had moved in and my nan hadn't told me. But the place looked just as abandoned as ever. No lights on downstairs, no car outside, no sound. The woman slowly lifted one hand. I didn't wave back. I just kept walking. When I got to my nan's, I tried to say it casually. I told her I'd seen someone in the empty house. She went quiet. Not shocked, not confused, quiet in a way that made me wish I hadn't said anything. She asked me which window. I told her the front one, second floor, left side. She looked towards her own curtains. Even though they were already closed, she said, "Don't look at that house again." Obviously, being 17, that only made me want to look more. The next evening, I made an excuse to go to the shop again. I told myself I wasn't scared. I was just curious. And if someone really was inside that house, maybe they needed help. The village was even quieter that night. It had rained earlier, so the road shone under the few street lamps that there were. I remember the smell of wet stone and grass and the sound of my trainers on the pavement. When I reached the empty house, I forced myself to look up. The upstairs window was empty. No woman, no movement, just the pale curtains hanging still behind the glass. I laughed under my breath, embarrassed at myself, and carried on walking. Then I heard tapping. Three slow taps. Not from upstairs window, from the front door. I turned around. The house was set back a little from the road, behind the overgrown garden and a short path. The front door had frosted glass panels, the old kind where you can't see clearly through them, only shapes. And there was a shape behind it. Someone standing in the hallway. A head, shoulders, a body close to the glass. I froze. The letterbox opened, not all the way, just enough to show darkness on the other side. Then a voice whispered, "Help me." It sounded like an old woman, frail, frightened, almost breathless. I didn't move. The voice came again. "Can you help me, love?" For a second, the fear turned into guilt. Because what if someone really was inside? What if an old woman had fallen? What if I'd seen her in the window because she was trapped in there somehow? I know this sounds stupid now, but in the moment, hearing that voice, part of me really did wonder if I was about to walk away from someone who needed help. I took one step towards the gate. The shape behind the frosted glass didn't move. "Please," the voice whispered, "help me." My hand lifted slightly, like it was about to open the gate, and then something changed. The voice cracked. Not like crying, not like pain. More like someone forgetting how they were supposed to sound. "Can you help me?" it said again, only this time it wasn't an old woman. It was deeper, broken, masculine. The same words, the same rhythm, but wrong. Every bit of sympathy drained out of me. I stepped backwards. The shape behind the door moved closer to the glass. "Can you help me?" it said again. Now I could hear what I hadn't noticed before. There was no panic in the voice, no fear, no weakness. It sounded rehearsed. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached my nan's house. I must have looked awful because the second she opened the door, she pulled me inside before I'd even finished speaking. She locked the front door, then the back door. Then she went around the house closing every curtain. Only when we were sitting in the kitchen did she ask what happened. I told her about the tapping. I told her about the letterbox. I told her about the voice that sounded like an old woman. When I said the voice changed, my nan went completely still. The next morning, she phoned the police. 2 officers came out and checked the empty house. At first I thought they'd find nothing and I'd feel like an idiot. But they were inside for a long time. When they came out, one of them asked if I'd touched the door. I said no. He nodded like that was the answer he wanted. They found food wrappers in the kitchen, a sleeping bag in the back rooms, muddy footprints on the stairs. Whoever had been inside hadn't just broken in for one night. They'd been living there. But that wasn't the worst part. Behind the front door, low behind the frame, they found a length of rope. There was also a roll of tape, a pair of gloves, and 2 kitchen knives wrapped in an old towel. The officer didn't say exactly what he thought the person had planned. He didn't have to. Before he left, he told my nan that if I had gone close enough to look through the letterbox, or if I had tried the handle, there was a good chance the person behind the door could have opened it before I had time to step back. They never found who had been living in the house. A few weeks later, it was properly boarded up. Eventually, someone bought it. They painted the door blue, cut back the garden, replaced the windows, and made it look normal again. But whenever I visit my gran, I still cross the road before I pass it, because I can still hear the voice in my head. Not the old woman's voice, the second one. The one that said the exact same words. "Help me."